In this video, I'm talking about one of the biggest, hardest challenges of being a Scorpio. This applies not only to people that have a Scorpio sun, but anyone that has dominant Scorpio energy in their chart, Scorpio on a personal planet, or else just like a loaded 8th house or a ton of planets in Scorpio. At the end of the day, if this resonates with you, then it's for you. I'll also say I think this is a challenge that everyone that's empathetic or has a bit of an intuitive, sensitive soul or grew up feeling a little bit like the ugly duckling, you're going to find something that you can relate to in this. And I think that there's something unique about the Scorpio experience, such that I think this is a common experience for a lot of Scorpios. So I'm framing it in that context, but I think this could resonate with a lot of different people. So let's get to it. When talking about the Scorpio archetype, the Scorpio experience, there's this theme of self-sabotage that comes up again and again. And I've talked about it in a lot of my content about Scorpios. I've experienced it as a Scorpio moon, and I've heard it from you all as well. Self-sabotage isn't, there's no one trigger, one size fits all explanation for why we engage in self-sabotaging behaviors. But the one I want to focus today on is shame. Shame. It's a big word. There's a lot there. It's an intense emotion, arguably the worst emotion. And I really think that's the core thorn. That's really the linchpin of a lot of really destructive Scorpio self-sabotage. It's these really intense and at times unmanageable shame cycles of action, consequence, and this experience of reacting to that in the world, of fielding how other people respond, fielding what they say about you, being your own harsh inner critic, all of that contributing to these like incredible low points. And when you don't have a way to identify what's going on or have other things to give you a little bit of a jetpack out of those rock bottom moments, it keeps repeating itself. And you can adopt and inherit and embody just what are ultimately false narratives, but to you, they seem real. Like I am not good, or there's something very wrong with me. Why have I done the things that I've done? And all that sounds like dark and ominous. I'm not even talking about big things. I'm talking principally about shame that's built up over time with Scorpios from not being totally understood by the world around them, from being highly sensitive, from being a very intense kind of person. And this starts in childhood for Scorpios. If they're not in a family structure or a community where they're really deeply seen, deeply understood, deeply loved, it can be really challenging. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. Pluto is the god of the underworld. It's the shadow. It's the dark underbelly. It's the deep recesses of our unconscious. It's this urge and drive and will and power and obsession that contributes to this eternally recurring theme of transformation and rebirth. All of those themes, they're not like themes that you see in everyday society. Like in grade school, you're not talking about obsession and such intense feelings and emotions. In society generally, we're not talking about our shadow. And it's a shadow for a reason, right? These are things that are deeply buried in any level you want to look at it, whether they're repressed in society through social norms, whether they're repressed in the individual, just from shuttering down impulses and less conscious urges and drives and thoughts. They can be repressed in families. But for someone that's born with a Scorpio placement, this is a theme of their life, of their personality, their identity. We can get, obviously more nuance than that when we're talking about like specifically where in the chart it is, but just generally, like it or not, someone that has Scorpio, is a Scorpio, they have to deal with it. Growing up, rites of passage, coming of age, coming into one's own skin, one's own shoes, that process already is hard and sucks, and it's full of confusion and fear, and it doesn't need anything else to just sometimes feel very lonely and isolating. But when someone has Scorpio energy, it's like all those things on crack. Everything is felt so much more intensely. And it's a process, that it's not just like, oh, we come of age or we're adults and it all goes away. It's a lifelong process, and it changes. And hopefully with greater awareness and self-understanding, it gets easier, but it's going to be a challenge, right? Because Scorpio individuals, they feel the weight of a disappointment, of a broken friendship, of a breakup in a relationship. They have their first love and they feel their first heartbreak. For everyone that sucks, but for a Scorpio, sometimes it's so intense and this stuff, it bubbles up out of nowhere and they misbehave, or they get depressed, or they get angry, or they say things that they regret, or else they're just like in this maybe rock bottom low point of the scorpionic cycle, and it's just like, what the hell is even wrong with me? Am I depressed? Do I need to be on drugs, like pharmaceutical drugs? That's just one example. There's a lot of concepts that we could throw at people that have Scorpio energy. And it's not a one-for-one match. I'm not saying people that have certain psychological conditions or certain attributes, like there's always an astrological corollary. To an extent, these different languages, concepts, brackets, all have some value. But we think about Scorpio individuals, they can be labeled as, oh, you have generalized anxiety, or you're depressed, or you're a highly sensitive person, or you're an introvert, or you're this Myers-Briggs. All these things they're things to define, to understand. Regardless of however it's packaged, Scorpios live a life where they're going out into the world and they're just extremely sensitive to things in ways that other people aren't. And there isn't always room for people to understand that about them. Scorpios will struggle to be seen, they'll struggle to be understood, and that is, you have to understand, this is can be such a painful and lonely and isolating spot. And what's worse than not being understood is being criticized or judged or made to feel like you're ultimately like bad, or there's something wrong with you. This is the core of the experience of sort of an immature or Scorpio that's still learning. They're like, what's wrong with me? I'm more sensitive than other people. I'm saying in way too many words that it all contributes to this feeling of shame, that there's something wrong with me that I need to change. And one thing that really changed my life in a lot of ways was actually first getting into astrology and discovering, oh, there's more to this than just like a sun zodiac sign. There's charts and aspects, and you can study astrology your whole life and still uncover nuances. But when I discovered that I was a Scorpio moon and started reading more about it, like suddenly, I don't know, it was like, I have to look back and say this is like a turning point moment in my life. Like suddenly, instead of being so intense of this mode of there's something so wrong and I need to purify it and perfect it, it was like, all right, astrologers are saying this is a pretty like shitty karmic placement and it sucks and like these people are really tough, blah, blah, blah. But you read it and I'm like, oh yeah, this is me. Like I can separate out, and I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek with what astrologers say, right? Like Scorpio moons are incredibly gifted. It is just, it can be gnarly, right? It can be a little bit gnarly. But as I was like diving more into it and reading about high expression of Scorpio moon energy, the low expression, the gifts, the challenges, it's not like everything was fixed instantly, but it set me on this path of becoming more aware and thinking about things less like, oh, this person said something, or this person made me feel really bad because I got really emotional, or I was really sensitive, or they think I'm too, it was more just like, nah, this is me. And I can focus on being the best version of myself, and that's okay. But it can take many years to shed inherited ideas and feelings of shame, like full stop, it just does. But I will say that the antidote to it is really like an instant paradigm shift, because instead of shame is at the core of this negative self-talk, like I'm not worthy. And the antidote to it is really at that moment, at that thought level is being able to tell yourself like, no, I accept myself. I love myself. I am worthy. I am inherently good. I have good intentions. And it allows you to avoid that shame spiral, because maybe you make a mistake or you make an emotional fool of yourself, or you're so vulnerable and people aren't ready and you feel humiliated. From a shame perspective, you're like, oh my God, why did I do this? And you become like obsessed and obsessed and obsessed about it. And the obsession only further entrenches you in the shame state, which is hard. If you're a Scorpio that's been in that spot, you know what I'm talking about. But instead of applying like, ooh, this, I'm so bad, it's like this idea, I'm good. That was maybe a mistake. That was like not great, but that's okay. I forgive myself because I am lovable. I am worthy. I am on this path. I'm becoming the best version of myself. I'm really trying. And that's something, even that simple shift can be life-changing. And when I say it takes a long time to do it, I don't mean that it takes a long time to make that shift. It's just, it takes time. It's a habit. It's a thought habit. And that's what takes time, because you're not always going to be perfect. You're going to find yourself or catch yourself back in negative self-talk, negative headspaces, but over time, you can solidify a better way of thinking about yourself. I don't know if anyone's ever read Power versus Force. It's not necessarily astrology related, but it is definitely like more esoteric kind of book. People that are into astrology probably might be into this kind of book. One thing that the author does, David Hawkins, is he, drafts up this map of consciousness, and he assigns every emotion an energy level. And interestingly, shame is actually at the lowest. It's like a 20. A 20 sucks. Like enlightenment, woo, yeah, enlightenment. That's like way better than shame, right? I think that's like 7,000 or something. I always think it's kind of funny with this book. He puts the book like super high. It's like not at enlightenment, but it's like enlightenment, then my book, Power versus Force. I'm being a little silly. You got to read it. I honestly love the book, but you also have to be like, I can't not sometimes poke fun at things. But the reason that shame is like at the bottom is because things like anger, pride, maybe jealousy, these aren't like great emotions. Like they're still like in the bottom of the barrel, but those things are more energetic. They can be used to propel movement outwards. They have built-in fuel to get you higher to some of the other energy states, consciousness states. When you're at shame, it's like you're stuck in bad cement and everything smells and you're surrounded by garbage and you're so pulled into these ideas of apathy or I'm never going to change or I'm always this way and I'm so unworthy, and there's not a lot there to help pull you out. If you've ever felt like you're in these places or you're in this place, just know that you can get out of it. And it just starts with reminding yourself that you have tremendous gifts and you are meant to be here and it's going to get better. And you have space to be you and just be you. And we really need that. And you're loved. You have to practice being able to love yourself consistently and forgive yourself. And you may think, oh, there's no way I could ever do that. You have to believe that you can. Or if you feel like you're there by nature of just a lot of tough external circumstances, know that as you're going through this hard process, you are also wielding and forging and I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. You're making gold, right? You're making diamonds. Diamonds can't be made without the most craziest, intense, hard pressure in the world. It's one of the strongest materials physically that we've ever discovered. Great things are happening. The darkest parts of our lives, the parts of our lives that we most fear, that's where the treasure really comes from. So hang in there, find the light, get some sunlight, find things that remind you of yourself and that self-love and get you out of that shame spiral. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.